Today on the show, we are going to be talking about beyond the game, redefining athletic identity to really help teen youth athletes really find their purpose outside of just sports. And I have a fantastic guest, Michael Willett of Walk On Nation. We actually spoke at an event together recently talking to D2 athletes. And when I heard him speak, I was like, oh my gosh, I need you to come on my podcast and talk about this because in the area that I live in Dallas, Texas, high school sports are huge and people find their entire identity. I mean, families, I think, are grounded in the identity of their young athletes playing sports. And this is such an important topic. So, Michael, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Walk On Nation, what all you do, and then we'll rock and roll with some questions.
Cool. Sounds like a plan. First off, Amy, thank you for having me on. I
Uh,
appreciate a little bit of my background. So I'm originally from Long Island, New York. Ended up playing football in Florida at UCF. Came in as preferred walk-on, got my scholarship within that year. So I was lucky to say the least.
mhm.
That time, anything you can go through as a college athlete, I felt like I went through from getting that scholarship to 2 years later going 0-12, losing every single game, not the best of years, to 2 years later undefeated, 12-0, all that great stuff. So being able to play, get conference championship rings is great. The only thing that for my senior year, I didn't get to play at all. Had a career-ending injury, helmet to my quad, internal bleeding calcified to a whole new bone. So I have an extra bone in my leg thanks to football. Appreciate that stuff, football.
Right.
But I had a big identity crisis. I had no idea who I was after that. I was an athlete my whole life, as we all know. Been told you're an athlete, been playing sports. All I've known was athletics. So when it was taken away from me without me even being close to prepared, I had no idea who I was. So I ended up interning at UCF Student Athlete Welfare Development Office, where they do life skills, resume building, all that stuff is what they do. And I kind of found my passion again. But the only thing that they didn't cover, which I don't blame them by any means, is really talk about athletic identity. So I decided to branch out and create Walk On Nation, which is centered around redefining athletic identity, helping athletes realize who they are as a person outside of their sport. Now, unlike most people, I don't really care about the transition of a life after sports transition. I don't think about that. I'm more of why you're in and now, understand who you
Yeah.
are, so resource to your advantage. You and I both know that athletes have so many resources at their advantage while they're playing, and they don't realize till it's gone, and no one
Right.
really cares as an athlete. So while you're playing, know who you are, so you can use those resources that you have to your advantage. So that's a quick gist of what I do. Do workshops all around helping athletes realize who they are, and that's what I do now. That's my purpose. So I'm happy that things turned out the way they are.
Yeah, I love that so much. Okay, so let's start by having you actually even define what a strong athletic identity is and how can that both positively and negatively affect an athlete no matter their age.
Yeah, so strong athletic identity really means you're just rooted solely in athletics. That the
Mhm.
only thing you can go about is I'm an athlete. That's like if I was in this podcast and say, "Hi, my name is Mike Wood. I just play football," and that's it to me. That's what having identity really rooted in athletics is. Now, there's a positive side to that.
Mhm.
So athletes who are just driven solely on being the greatest, athletes only. This is everything in my all eggs in one basket, which can be good physically, but as we all know, there's a 100% chance athletics comes to an end. So when that does happen, you have identity foreclosure. Then who are you? Most athletes whose identity is solely in athletics, once it ends, they're completely lost because that's all they've known their whole life. Like most of us that play sports.
Yeah.
So there's a plus side in the physical, but the mental side leads to depression, anxiety, lack of self worth, lack of confidence. The list can go on and on and on because we look for our validation in others rather than in ourselves. Being an athlete, all we do is get validated. We're in the business of what have you done for me lately? So when you do something great, you're rewarded for it. You do something bad, you get the other side of it. So when that's completely gone, then what? So that's when we see the negative side effects of identity being solely rooted in athletics.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, like you said, one thing can take away an athlete's identity. I mean, like their athletic ability to play, one injury, one whatever it is. So I definitely hear what you're saying there. So for athletes out there, how can they start to recognize and then also separate their personal identity from their athletic achievements?
Yeah, one thing they can need to understand is being an athlete is what you do. It is not who you are. we tend to think it's who we are for all the time, and that's what gets us stuck. So understand that there's multiple facets to you, whether that's you're a son, you're a brother, you're a daughter, you're a sister, you're a leader, whatever you may be. You may be a musician. There's so many parts of you that we just don't explore because we feel like we don't have the time. Which I like to counter that by saying we have plenty of time. It's just priorities. What do we put our priorities in? Because most of us, especially younger athletes, we spend our time in scrolling and all these other things on social media where we get caught in comparing and contrasting and so many other things. So really helping them understand that there's so much more to yourself, but to do that, you have to prioritize yourself, which means detaching from social media. There's times where you can just be with yourself and just breathe. 15 minutes, just take your time for yourself. Go for a walk, listen to music. There's so many things you can do to see what do you actually like. So many times with athletes, people dictate how we should feel, what we should do. We never really get the chance to say, let me sit down and see what I actually like. Am I doing it for me? Am I doing it for others? So athletes really taking that time to just sit down and be. A lot of times we don't like to deal with the negative thoughts in our mind, which is human nature. We don't like to deal with negative. So we always keep running 100 miles an hour. But you have to stop, embrace those negative thoughts, learn how to overcome that, and just say, hey, maybe I don't like this. Maybe there's something I don't like. Maybe something I do like. But take that time to actually sit down and discover it. That's how you can go about finding new facets of who you are as a person.
Yeah, and especially with like young athletes, middle school, high school, oftentimes they're not just playing one sport. And so, I mean, they're moving from one sport to the next sport. And there is, to your point, there's no real time to stop and be like, who am I outside of this? Because they're constantly moving from sport to sport to sport, et cetera. So, for an athlete, even for parents of athletes, what are some signs that an athlete might be struggling with finding their sole identity in their sport versus, like you're saying, in themselves and something else?
Yeah, so signs which reality is most of us are very insecure as athletes due to the fact our whole life is comparing and contrasting, this person doing that, this person is doing this. So especially when you see an athlete when they have a bad play and they go downhill fast, as most athletes do, a bad play, the game just goes bad, the day goes bad, this third. When you see that happen often, that's when you should start worrying. Or when you see the fact that, how do I want to put this? When you see the fact that when your whole day relies on your sport itself and you can do nothing outside of that, or you stop having fun. When the athlete starts putting pressure on themselves and stop having fun, that's when you need to sit back and have a reality check. Because sports supposed to be fun at the end of the day. Yes, if you want to go on to the greater levels of college, it's a business. Pros is a business. But your best athletes have fun when they play.
Yeah.
So one athlete that's played good, playing up tense with all this pressure on their shoulders, just relax, have fun. That's the game supposed to be. Seeing that, reiterate to your child that hey, sports is supposed to be fun. You're not getting pressure from my end. I want you to just have fun and do the best you can. If you're not having fun, we can stop. Most athletes don't feel like they have the chance to just stop and be. They feel pressures from whether that's parents, coaches, like I have to keep going. I want to
Yeah.
disappoint my people, and you only disappoint yourself in the long run. And you have to see what you want. If you don't want it anymore, then stop because you're going to put yourself in a downward spiral. That's really not worth it.
Yeah. So you bring up an interesting point because being a sports dietitian that's worked Pee Wee to Pro, we've worked in my business with lots of middle school, lots of high school athletes. And sometimes, God bless all the really committed parents. I commend you for all the things that you do for your athletes. But to your point, I think many times athletes feel like they're in it and they can't get out, even if they wanted to. And I think that parents don't mean to put that pressure on athletes, but oftentimes it does get put on them that their whole focus becomes around their sport and their whole focus becomes around not really necessarily winning and losing, but who they are in their sport. And is their sport going to take them to college to play? And is their sport going to take them to the next level? And before long, parents are doing every single thing possible to make sure that their athlete is the best that they can be, has the most advantages that they can have, which is great. But for parents and coaches out there, how do you encourage them to help their athletes find a more well-rounded identity? So not necessarily just in their sport. And I get it when parents are investing tons of money, tons of time, tons of resources into an athlete and their sport, that becomes the sole focus of it. So, how do you encourage parents and coaches, especially at that younger level, middle school, high school level, to help their athletes find that well rounded identity?
Definitely. I would say one, appreciate all the parents that are putting all their effort into
Yeah.
their kids. But the main thing is your job is to be a parent.
Yes.
So what I mean by that is you should be a soundboard for your child. If your child is nervous to talk to you about something, then you have some work to do to where you can open those doors. I should be able to talk about anything after the game. My parents were like, I don't want to talk about sports. Can we talk about anything else? All right, cool. What do you want to talk about? Your job is to be there to raise them. Coach's job is to be able to coach them. As a coach, yes, you have to train them hard and coach them hard to a degree, but this is more geared towards parents. Parents, be a parent.
Yeah.
You've done so much to this point, which you are appreciated for, but sometimes parents don't even realize you're adding a lot more pressure because I feel like I can't even talk to you about this because I feel like you've done so much for me. I have to do all this to make you proud and all your sacrifice. I have to do it.
Yeah.
Most it's like I have to do something in order to pay you back. It should be to the point of to where you don't have to pay me back. I'm your parent. I'm doing everything I
Yeah.
can to help. But at the same time, me being your parent means we can talk about whatever. It's not sports is the end all be all. Most athletes feel like if I don't do good in sports, my relationship with my parents is going to be tarnished, which I hope that's not the case for most parents, but most parents don't understand that part. And also, parents, every kid is not going to be an all star. Every kid is not going to make to the league. Every kid is not going D1. It is okay. There are lower levels there. Your kid can't be the best of the best because you putting that on them is also putting extra pressure on them as well. Just let your kid, be a parent. That's what I'll say. For coaches, the main thing is what I've learned from an 0-12 team to a 12-0 team, be a coach that's a player's coach that listens. Of course, we need you to put your foot down when need be, but also be there outside, be a human being.
Yeah.
Most coaches have played sports before, so you know what we're going through. Don't be that coach that's been there and does the same thing that you hated as well. Be the coach that changes the narrative. If you're there, we can listen, open up to you. Whether that's even coming to practice, we don't even do anything about practice. We just have fun, play tag, whatever that is, to where I look at you more as a mentor than a coach. So coaches just open that door to where sports is fun again. I know a lot of
Yeah.
coaches deal where sports isn't that fun. Make it fun. You're the coach. You have the autonomy to do that. So if you're the coach and you see something's going off the course, change it. Just make it fun again. That's what I'll say for that.
Yeah, I love that. And, it's so interesting because at all levels of sports, I mean, so my nephew is six. And so he's playing flag football. If you even think he gets the concept of flag football, he really doesn't. He just turned six in like August. And so I was at a game. Whoa, you would have thought we were playing in the Super Bowl with some of these parents and coaches. I was like, simmer down. And, my brother-in-law was like, my nephew just, she was like, he's just not getting the game. I'm like, but you know what? He's having a good time out there. And it is not affecting him 1 ounce that he is not pulling a flag out of someone's little shorts because he was having fun running around. But I do think it's interesting because sometimes that pressure can start so early on. And a lot of times it's good intentions, as you've said, but sometimes it gets taken a little far, I think. And I think a lot of times it's two parents wanting to live out maybe even some of their own sports dreams through their kids and having all of that. But I think you've really dialed in on the fun and making it something that they want to do and they want to go to and participate in. So when you talk about like this younger age, so obviously when they are still in school, we've got sports, there's other things going on. So how would you encourage younger athletes to find their identity? So outside of their sport. So what are some things that they can do to maybe explore their interests, explore their passions outside of just their day-to-day in their sport or sports, because we know that lots of young athletes play multiple sports.
Right. First thing I will say is, which is the hardest part, especially for younger athletes, is really not care what other people have to say. We may have a lot of interests, but we're embarrassed of what the interests are, what the passions are. Like for me, I love anime. I'm a comic nerd. Like I'm a nerd. I know I'm a nerd. But me being younger, I will never say I'm a nerd. Like, that's
Right.
embarrassing. I never want to
Right.
be stereotype. But most of our passions or interests may not be of what most people like. You're an athlete, stay an athlete. Don't do that. Don't be in music. Don't be in the arts. Don't do this. Don't do STEM. Don't do all these things. To where you got to be comfortable in your skin. So at the end of the day, no one can live your life but you. So when it definitely goes into exploring those passions, if you really like something, go have fun with it. Enjoy it, embrace it. Too many times we shut off the passion or shut off the
Yeah.
interest back what someone else thinks. We didn't really even get a chance to explore. So if you feel an inkling of maybe I want to try this, oh, this actually looks interesting, do it. Do it. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. That's what happens. Even as adults, we may want to do some things like, so and so said that's not that interesting. We talk ourselves out of so many things
Yeah.
because we are kids. It's like, I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to stick in the norm. Here's the thing first, if you're an athlete, you're not the norm. Being an athlete is not normal.
Yeah. No.
You're against the grain. So just stay with it. You you'll be surprised at what you truly like and where that passion pulls you in another realm. Because even
Well,
me,
mhm.
being
Nope,
a nerd,
keep going. Hmm.
me being like a nerd, there's some certain things I just don't like anymore, and I've realized that hey, I've grown out of it. It's okay to grow out of things. It's okay to go in new ventures. It's okay. So just the main thing is be okay with liking what you like, and who cares what anyone else thinks.
I love that. And when you think about kids that are going to college, or even like when you transition from college into jobs, if any parent is out there, any person, they want you to be well-rounded. They don't want you to have just done one thing. They want you to have done a lot of things and had a lot of different experiences. And because that ultimately makes you a better human when you've had to experience different types of activities, different types of passions, etc. And to your point, it really helps you figure out maybe what it is that you want to do. You'll see kids that play high school sports and then they're like, I don't want to play college sports, or whatever that is. And, being like, they want to go a different direction. And so I think that there's seasons to everything, and that's important too. But yeah, I really love what you said about just dialing in and not being afraid. I think that that's huge. We put so much pressure on ourselves to, oh, is someone going to think this or think that, not being afraid to really bust out and try something different or try something new. So love that. Now, in what ways can athletic identity for a younger athlete create these feelings of pressure or stress as they're playing? And how do you recommend, more importantly, that they manage these? Is it you mentioned talking to parents? Is it potentially getting a third party person involved? An athlete may not necessarily want to talk about those feelings of stress and pressures. So, how would you encourage a young athlete to voice what they're experiencing?
Yeah, there's certain things I know all athletes feel, which is fear of failure,
Mhm.
seeking validation, and lack of confidence. So, with that, first thing, fear is a normal feeling. We
Yeah,
all feel fear. If you don't feel fear as a human, you're a very strange person. I will just put it that way. You're
right.
very don't feel fear. But we also have to put things in perspective. We weren't great when we first started our sport anyway. We messed up. We failed. You learn from that failure. So when it comes to speaking out, one, it comes to the terms of our parents, our coaches, making a space where athletes can talk in the first place. Which goes back to the beginning. If I have a parent that's putting so much pressure on me, I don't think I can open up and talk anyway. Two, if it's not feeling fun, we have to discuss that. Maybe it's just an adversity block that we hit to where we can talk about it. But maybe it goes to the point where I'm just really not having fun anymore. I just don't want to play. Like there's a difference between not having fun and just a hiccup in the road.
Right.
Sometimes nowadays the hiccup in the road is like I quit. As you and I both know, you have to be able to fight through adversity. You're young, you're gonna have adversity. Life is gonna hit you. Honestly, you want adversity now than later. Because if you learn how to fight through adversity now, it's much easier to fight it when you're an adult. There's sometimes where you just have to take it and go through the season, do the fact that you learn through that, and after you can be done. I just think athletes have to be able to one, just be able to enjoy the process and take what comes with it. We come in with too many expectations
Yeah.
of I have this, have to do this, have to be that. Take it day by day. What we don't do anymore is live in the present. I have to do this for the future, or I messed up in the past. Like live in the present. You messed up one place, shake it off. The next place here. You messed up in school one day or whatever. The next day's here. For young
Yeah.
athletes, what we have to do is live in the present. The biggest problem we have is FOMO, fear of missing out, which I think is so funny because you can't miss out on something when you can pause the video. If you can pause it, means you can always come back to it. So you're not missing out on anything. Be in the present, be in the now. You will thank yourself later when you're in the now. Because if you're always living in the future or past, you'll miss what's going on in front of you. And you can miss those interests that you may be interested in. You can miss those passions. You can miss that different identity that you can explore. You're too busy worrying about the future or the past. Worried about what you feel now and go through that and explore it and see what happens.
Yeah, I love that. Here's a thought too. So let's say you have parents or coaches that are maybe like sensing something is up with their athlete. Maybe they're not voicing it like we want them to. At what point, do you recommend like getting a third party person involved? That third party potentially being a sports psychologist or a counselor or a therapist, because oftentimes it's hard for younger athletes or athletes in general, really anybody to talk to sometimes like your parent or your coach, or because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid they're going to think this or think that, etc. So, do you have kind of, if you're a parent or a coach, where you might say, oh man, these are some signs that maybe we need to get someone else involved to be like a sounding board, a third party person, because we know that athletes oftentimes might open up a little more to them than potentially their own parent or their own coach?
Yeah, I would say for parents and coaches, there's always should be a third party involved. I wouldn't say always jump to the sports psychiatrist part, but whether that's a family friend or
Yeah.
someone who's been in the athletic world, because sometimes we all know as kids, your parents say the thing over and over and over again, but when someone else says like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that does make this," you're like, "I've been saying that this whole time."
Yeah. Parents always tell me that with nutrition. I tell them that all the time. I'm like, yeah, I'm just not their mom.
Right? You just have to go to someone that you trust and that the
Yeah.
athletes themselves can trust. It can be a neighbor, but
Yeah.
I trust that neighbor and I know that neighbor as a kid. Like the thing with athletes that most athletes have is a trust issue. If I don't trust you or we haven't built anything, I'm not saying anything to you in the first place. So you
Yeah.
can a third party sports psychologist to me, I'm still not going to talk because I have no idea who you are. So for parents, just getting building, it takes a village. So creating that village for that athlete to where they're comfortable. I won't talk to my parent about this, but I'll talk to so and so about this. I'll talk to a teammate's parent, another teammate's parent about it because it's not my dad. So, but it's someone else's dad. It's a little
Right.
different.
Yeah.
So, just having that village around you, you may not have to go to the third party of a sports psychiatrist or anything of that nature. It can just be someone that's local that knows the family that
Yeah.
opens most. That's what I've seen. That's what I've gone through. I won't open up to a sports psychologist. I'm not giving you my whole life background. If there's someone else that knows me, I'll open up to them if we have a conversation because I trust you. It's the whole trust factor. That's even in a normal relationship. If you're in a relationship with someone, you're not going to open up if you don't trust them. I have to trust you first for the walls to be dropped. So it's if you have a village where an athlete trusts someone, if you're a parent, you know that your athlete, your son or daughter, trusts someone else, try using that person. It's this progression, and hopefully they break from there.
Yeah, I love that. I know when I was growing up, my parents were youth pastors. So they like had, we had teenagers around all the time. And same, very interesting because it's like kids would come to my parents and talk to them because they trusted them as a source. Technically, they were parents, but they weren't their parents. And so that's a really great recommendation. The neighbor, the family friend, the mentor, even like the uncle, the aunt, those types of people. You're right. That's a really great recommendation. And seeing, I think the trust factor is huge in regards to trusting that they're going to listen, and then also trusting that they're not just going to go tell everyone the
Yeah,
information. So that's a really great recommendation. So looking to a neighbor, a friend, a family member, church member, something like that, that might be someone that could help. I find that lots of times athletic trainers are probably almost like therapists too, because athletes spend so much time with them that
yeah.
oftentimes they're willing to open up to them as well. So many friends that are athletic trainers. So no, great recommendation. Okay, Michael. So now talk to me a little bit about like, I know you go out and do lots of different trainings and talks. Obviously, we were at one together, but talking about Walk On Nation, and how you really coach athletes to, I think the phrase is be enhanced and not defined by their sport. And can you give me maybe an example or two of some of the athletes that you've worked with or where you've seen them maybe make this shift where they felt like they might have been, their identity was in their sport, and once they, made that shift, how they felt?
Yeah, so my job, honestly, is I'm a facilitator, and my job is bring a new perspective. My job isn't to tell you this is right or this is wrong. As athletes, we've mainly been given one perspective our whole life and
Mhm.
never seen the other side. So many athletes have heard the term more than athlete. When I ask them, what does that mean? They have no idea. Like, it sounds cool. It's a tagline,
Right.
but it's just basic questions like, who are you outside of being an athlete? What do you want to be? What is your purpose? Just having them dive through that conversation, because a lot of times we don't really have that talk at all,
Yeah.
or we talk about it for a second, like, I don't feel like talking about it. So I make it to where it's a safe space for the athletes to speak, and even to the point of like, what are some of the obstacles you deal with? And most athletes' obstacles are themselves. So, for instance, when it comes to validation, like we know most athletes seek, I ask, why do you seek that validation? Because it feels good, this, that, and the third. But when's the last time you validated yourself? Then it goes, huh, you know what? I can't remember the last time.
Yeah.
Or the people who are have things to say about you, how many of them can walk a day in your shoes? You know what? Most of them can't.
Right.
It's understanding the power you have being an athlete. I like to show athletes that they don't realize what they have. What I mean by that is, if most athletes would have stopped playing right now, like college athletics would fold if the athletes stopped playing. The
Right.
athlete, the athletes have the power. They just don't understand that. My favorite question is, outside of a degree in sport, what do you get out of college? Um, Maybe networking, this, that, and the third, which I always follow with, well, how do you actually network outside of your team? Eh.
Right.
So let's be honest in this room. My bigger thing is open and honesty. Just having them realize that, yes, it's tough being an athlete, but there's so many great sides that come with that. You just all have to remember what you have within you. We
Yeah.
forget what we have within ourselves, and we should be our biggest fan. Same time when athletes wonder why coaches isn't playing me. Well, are you nervous? Are you timid on the field? I love asking this question. I always go, all of you in this room are coaches right now. You have athletes that can be top tier, but they're afraid to fail, won't make a play. They're very timid and lack confidence. What do you do with that athlete? Everyone, oh, we benched the kid. Oh, great. You all know the answer. You all know the answer. So why would you be that kid?
Yeah.
Oh, oh. It's having open and honest conversations to just help them change their perspective. It's not as hard as they think it is. It's just a perspective shift. And once they get a new perspective, it's their choice to decide where they want to go with it. My job is not to tell you who you are. I can never, ever, ever tell you who you are.
Right.
That's my job. My job is to help you understand that you can define who you want to be. I shouldn't be the one that defines it for you. You have to define it for you. So that's the workshops we do. High school, we have a whole leadership cohort where we go through different, like 9 different modules and courses that really helps build them up from identity, core values, the legacy you leave behind. And we go through that whole gambit to just help them internally so the external piece makes sense for them. All we want to do is have a conversation.
Yeah.
That's a big walk on nation. I have a story, yeah, but who cares? My job is for you all to be able to speak up, because it means more if I see my teammate struggling and he's open and talking about it, then after I leave, the conversation keeps going. My job is to be the first domino push. The domino effect happens. So just building that conversation for the athletes to have, and from there, hopefully the best happens for them.
Yeah, I love that. So for the young athletes out there that might be listening, what would you say? Maybe they're listening and they're like, "Oh wow, just an awareness is coming across. Like I feel like I'm grounded in my sport. Like I'm identified by my sport. My sport is what I do. What am I doing outside of my sport?" What would you say is like the first step that they really take to, obviously we know self-awareness is everything, but the first step that they might take to start saying, maybe my identity isn't in my sport. What do I do to get to that point? If they feel like they're their sport, what's their next step? Like, what would you encourage them to start with first?
1st. My first thing would be, sit down and ask yourself, who are you outside of being an athlete? Then once you do that, start writing the list down. You may be surprised of what you actually write down. There can be a very, very, very long list. You might not even realize this. And then
Yeah.
from there, something that, hey, I want to tap into this a little bit more. Maybe that's being an artist, or maybe that's being a musician, a director, maybe whatever it may be. Take that time to tap into that. I think we just see athlete first and just hone into that and focus in on that. Make a list of who are you? Make Try to figure out your purpose, which I know you're young, it's harder to do. But one thing I can guarantee you, your sport is not your purpose. We tend to think is our sport is our purpose, but when sports ends, I guess our purpose ends. So helping them show that you have a whole different purpose and how can you actually strive to that purpose. Like my purpose is serving others. This is how I live my purpose is walk on nation. However I can serve others, that's what I wake up to do every day. That's how I live my life. So helping them understand that purpose. Like I said, making that list, understanding who you are outside of being an athlete, and it starts from there. And honestly, the biggest thing for young athletes, please, and I say please, put the phone away for a second
Yeah.
because it go crazy. Because for any athletes that's listening, the last time you compared and contrast, you tell me what that's done for you lately. Not physically, mentally. Tell me if that's done anything good for you. And if you can actually tell, oh yeah, it's been great comparing and contrasting mentally, hey, keep doing it. But most of us have a very negative connotation when it comes to comparing and contrasting. So put that phone away and just be with yourself. Like I say, go for a walk, listen to music, maybe puzzle. I don't know what it is. Do whatever you want to do. As long as that gets you away from your phone and
Yeah.
away from screen time to definitely explore yourself. Because as you and I both know, self discovery is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow, but sometimes you just have to do it. And doing it younger, you'll thank yourself in the future.
I love that. I love that. So, yeah, taking that first step to find who you are, the things that you love, your passion area. And I think to your point, a lot of people just, they're so busy, they don't sit down and really think about it from kids to adults all across the board, like really thinking through what is it? Who do I want to be? And I think a lot of that's too, what do I want to be known for outside of just being an athlete? So I love that. And for coaches out there or parents are like, man, this would be so great to bring to our school or to our team or whatnot. Where can people find you, find more about what you offer, the different types of courses and facilitated trainings that you do? We'll drop it in the show notes, but tell me where people can find you.
Definitely our website, walkonnation.org. If you go to the contact page, whatever you need, send a message. I'll be sure to reply back. Instagram, walk_on_nation. Twitter, walk_on_nation. That's where you'll find me. My email's there, all that stuff in there, all the information's there. So if you need me, reach out. I got you.
Perfect. I love that. This is such an important topic, especially for, I mean, for all athletes, but for young athletes that have a world ahead of them in college and careers and life. And many of them are not going to play past that. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on to talk about this with the ultimate goal of having your sport enhance you, but not define you. So really appreciate your time today, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Amy. It was a blast being here.